Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, where today, Ducky shot in the Tier 7 Japanese torpedo destroyer, the Akatsuki, could be forgiven just from looking at the team lineups that he was going to have a really good game. I mean, it's not the best matchmaking you've ever seen for a Tier 7 Japanese torpedo destroyer, but it's pretty good. There's no aircraft carrier. He's top tier, and since that means this is a Tier 7 battle, there are no radar cruisers that he needs to worry about. Well, I mean, there are some, like maybe 2 or 3 Tier 7 cruisers that come with radar, but at Tier 7, a radar cruiser is a gimmick. It's definitely the exception rather than the rule, and in any case, none of those are present in this battle. So, no carrier, no radar. There are only 3 cruisers per team, and only one of the 3 cruisers per team is a light cruiser, which is way more dangerous to a destroyer than a heavy cruiser because of its rapid-firing 6-inch guns compared to a heavy cruiser's slower reloading 8-inch guns. There are also only 2 destroyers per team, and of those 2 destroyers, only one is a gunboat destroyer, the more significant threat to a torpedo destroyer like Ducky shot's Akatsuki. And even though the gunboat destroyer on the enemy team is also top tier, it's just a Mayhan, and I mean, the Mayhan's not a terrible ship, but it's not very good. I'll expand on the mediocrity of Tier 7 destroyers in a moment, but for now let's just finish off talking about the matchmaking, because there are lots and lots and lots of big, slow, stupid battleships for him to farm damage on with his torpedoes. And the only real downside to this matchmaking is that there are 2 submarines on each team, which means, well, if not for them, he would be the stealthiest ship in this battle. Well, him and the Akatsuki on the enemy team. So, other than that, no carrier, no radar, limited cruisers, only 1 light cruiser, limited destroyer opposition. In fact, there's not a lot of ships on the enemy team that are even going to come with a hydroacoustic search consumable, so aside from those 2 submarines, this is just about as good as the matchmaking could possibly get for this ship. But here's the problem. The Akatsuki is not a bad ship. I don't think any of the Tier 7 destroyers are particularly bad ships, although, with the possible exception of the Gajimada, I don't think any of them are particularly good either. But it's a torpedo destroyer, and I used to love torpedo destroyers. I worked my way up to the Shimakaze as fast as I possibly could. And I don't really regret it, but I also don't really like torpedo destroyers anymore. Because if you're playing a torpedo destroyer that isn't Swedish and to a lesser degree German, you're heavily limited by the slow reload of your torpedoes. And while your guns do hit very, very hard, and if you can get the first salvo off against even a gunboat destroyer like the Mayhan over there, and if you're accurate, you will put the fear of God into them with the amount of damage that these guns can do. The problem is the guns have a very, very slow reload. There are cruisers that load their guns faster than some of these Japanese destroyer 127mm gun turrets, and unless the guns are already pointing in the right direction, it'll be the middle of next week before you get them turned around. So you definitely rely on your torpedoes for doing the majority of the damage, which is fine. I mean, it's a torpedo destroyer. But the problem is, you need time to make a difference in one of these things, because the torpedo reload is so slow. The enemy Mayhan hopefully just learnt a lesson about smoke screens being torpedo magnets. He got cross-dropped there from Ducky shot and the friendly Sims. The Sims was the one who got the kill. Unfortunately, the team have just lost one of their heavy cruisers. The Furutaka is down. This is standard battle, by the way, not domination. Just in case you hadn't noticed. There are no caps, just a base for each team. And thus far, Ducky shot has managed to do some damage with his guns, but all of his torpedoes have missed. And this is a big problem in the Akatsuki, because if you want to make a difference, you have to make the torpedoes count. And in order to make the torpedoes count, like the enemy Akatsuki, who's just managed to torpedo and sink a Mackinson, you have to score hits with those torpedoes. And in order to do that, you need a small element of luck, certainly, but what you mostly need is time. And that's because, well, these Japanese torpedoes do tend to do a large amount of damage, and to compensate for that, and to make them different from the Swedes, and to a lesser degree the Germans, they have a very slow reload. So you need time to be effective. Time to get into position undetected. Hopefully without being spotted by submarines, or aircraft, or anything else for that matter. And time is a luxury that Ducky Shot is not going to have in this battle. The good news is he's just run out of destroyer opposition. The enemy Akatsuki has been sunk, so both enemy destroyers are dead. The bad news is they've just lost another battleship and their Atlanta. So they're now more than 200 points behind. It's here where Ducky Shot does get a spot of good luck. He's aiming torpedoes at the Julio Cesare over there while hiding inside this smoke screen. And more or less about the same time as the team lose yet another battleship and go more than 300 points behind, those torpedoes launched at the Italian Tier 5 premium battleship, the Julio Cesare, find an entirely different target instead, scoring 2 hits on and sinking the enemy Pensacola, which is nice. More of that, please. I mean, they are still more than 200 points behind, and things are going to get a lot worse before they start getting any better. The Julio Cesare is still out there. You can't see him through the smoke screen. He's still got about 20 seconds before his torpedoes come back off cooldown. And if he could bag himself a battleship, that would be great. So he's trying to get eyes on the big Italian, but the big Italian, well, he knows what a smoke screen means, and so he's turned and closed in close enough to actually spot Ducky Shot before Ducky Shot's torpedoes are ready, and with the direction that the Italian battleship is sailing, the torpedoes aren't going to hit him anyway. That was a very smart move from the Italian battleship player. It's probably because of players like him that Ducky Shot's team are down by 200 points and 2 ships. Ducky Shot's torpedoes are back. He's not going to get the Julio Cesare, but he might get lucky with another cluster of ships around the other side of the island, like the New York, for example. Speaking of New York's, Ducky Shot's team have just lost theirs. There's the enemy U-69, and I think the friendly U-69 has just been spotted, which means the New York is turning away. Ducky Shot's trying to get the guns to do something useful, maybe set a fire, maybe not. The U-69's torpedoes have all missed, and with the New York manoeuvring like that, I mean, the New York is a slow ship, but it's surprisingly manoeuvrable, and yep, it looks like the New York's going to avoid all of Ducky Shot's torpedoes. And the friendly U-69 is getting depth charged and torpedoed by the enemy U-69. So you're about to see something that you don't see very often. A submarine being taken out and torpedoed by another submarine. Ducky Shot now only has 4 surviving teammates and they are 400 points behind. So he really needs to start making a difference here. He manages to set a fire on the New York, but before the fire really has a chance to burn, the friendly Nagato takes out the New York by slapping his broadside with some 16-inch armor-piercing shells. They're still outnumbered 5-8. They're still 300 points behind, but the Nagato has bought them some time, and time is what Ducky Shot needs. Time to make these torpedoes work. The enemy U-69 is still over there somewhere. The Sims has just dropped the smoke screen, which is nice. Unfortunately, it's also blocking line of sight to all of those enemy targets for the remaining ships that might actually be able to do something about them. So Ducky Shot pops his speed boost in order to clear the smoke screen and actually start spotting some targets. You can tell he's starting to get desperate here. He's aiming torpedoes down that gap. And the torpedo spread is wider than the gap, so some of the torpedoes will get through, but some of them won't. Enemy torpedo spotted, probably from the U-69, slams on the brakes, does a turn, torpedo passes by harmlessly. There's only 11 minutes of this game left. And he's done 40,000 damage, which is nowhere near enough, given how quickly he's losing teammates. Another enemy submarine just got spotted up ahead and then went undetected. He's got 2 of his 3 torpedo launchers ready to go. Each launcher only fires 3 torpedoes though. Quick word about the differences between the 2 different lines of Japanese destroyers, because this is hilarious. Okay. So, oh, they've just lost the Nagato. Fantastic. And they've just lost one of their submarines, the Cachalot. So there's now 3 of them left against 8 enemies, and the enemy team are 500 points ahead. And in Ducky Shot's cap circle. So, The Japanese destroyer line splits into two after Tier 5, with one line being torpedo-focused destroyers and the other line being gun-focused destroyers, although you don't really start to see that difference until Tier 8 and 9. Which leads to the unusual situation down here at Tier 7 of the Akatsuki, which is the torpedo destroyer, having better guns than the Shiratsuyu, which is the gunboat destroyer, and the Shiratsuyu, which is the gunboat destroyer, having better torpedoes than the Akatsuki, which is supposed to be the torpedo-focused destroyer. Because reasons. Don't look at me like that. I didn't design these ships. I didn't put them in their relevant places in the tech tree, okay? I just describe them for you. Anyway, finally a spot of good news. The torpedoes that he landed on the Kirishima didn't kill it, but it reduced it to low enough health that the friendly Nürnberg was able to finish it off. Unfortunately, the Nürnberg is now being chased hard by a whole bunch of enemy ships, one of which is about to sail into another bunch of torpedoes and become Ducky Shot's second actual kill of the game. But then there's a whole bunch of bad news. The Sims over there is about to go down, but of more importance to Ducky Shot is the Emile Bertin that's just popped up with a whole bunch of friends right on the other flank. Ducky Shot switched to the armour piercing because he did have the broadside of a light cruiser to shoot at short range, and the armour piercing did surprisingly little damage, so he gets the torpedoes away, switches back to the high explosive, and then he gets lit up by the Emile Bertin's hydro, which means the smoke screen is now 100% useless, and he needs to kill that guy fast with the guns because he's likely to die before the torpedoes get there. There are the Emile Bertin's torpedoes, which were another good reason why he didn't want to be hanging around inside that smoke screen, and now he's got the Julio Cesare. But the other torpedo launchers are back up, and this time he's got the Julio Cesare right where he needs them, and he saves the second set of torpedoes until he knows he's going to need them, because he is going to need them, finishes off the Italian, and because he didn't try to finish him with his guns, he has managed to go undetected, which means the Repulse knows he's there but cannot see him. That's the good news. The bad news is he's just lost the Nürnberg, and he's the last surviving member of his team against 4 enemies, 2 of which are submarines and outspot him, so he doesn't really have the stealth advantage, and he doesn't really have the speed advantage either, because that's a Repulse over there. I mean, on paper, the Akatsuki is way faster than the Repulse. It's not a slow destroyer. Unlike some of the Japanese destroyers, this thing does actually have a top speed of 38 knots. And while the Repulse only has a top speed of 31.5, it has an extremely long duration and very, very good engine boost. Which means that while that engine boost is running, the Repulse is actually the fastest ship left in this battle. And his base is being capped. And he's been spotted, which is really bad news, because that means there's a submarine. Yep, there it is. This also means the Repulse can see him. It also means the Miyoko can see him. And if he's inside shooting range, he's about to have a very, very bad day. He fired a couple of shots off at the submarine, which forced it to dive, which means he is now no longer being spotted. And there's the Miyoko. He is probably going to have to try to take this guy down in a gunfight. And while he does have a superior rate of fire to the Miyoko shells hit a lot harder. So he dukes with the throttle there, reduces the speed, forces the Miyoko to overshoot. He's been pinged, blows his damage control because he does not want to get torpedoed, and manages to take out the Miyoko with his guns, scoring the Kraken Unleashed. Also, once again, undetected. Now, he doesn't have hydro, so he doesn't know exactly where the submarine is, but he can follow the oil slick to give him a pretty good idea. And even if he did have hydro, if the submarine was at maximum depth, it wouldn't help him find him anyway. But he follows the oil slick, starts dumping depth charges, crosses his fingers, lies back and thinks of Japan. Come on, baby. Yes, yes, 2, and a fire. Come on, how many depth charges? 6 depth charges. 6 depth charges and a fire, and that's not enough to sink the submarine. Depth charges away again, and he's got him. That just leaves the Repulse and 1 more submarine, which means Ducky, realistically, is going to have to get 7 kills in order to win this battle, because there ain't no way he's going to win by capping. Where is the other submarine? You know the Repulse is going to be heading this way. Fortunately, he's got all of his torpedoes back. 5.5 minutes of this battle remaining. Oh, there's the Repulse. Right. Well, you have to count on the repulse manoeuvring, so he's spreading the torpedoes around as best as he can. He knows he's... well, he doesn't know exactly where that other submarine is, but the fact that he's not spotted tells him that he's at least not close. But here's the problem. If that submarine doesn't want to be found, he's not going to be found. We'll worry about that later. Let's check out these torpedoes. Oh, you might get lucky with some of these, actually. That was a decently dispersed spread. One, maybe? Yeah. It did cause a flood, though. And the flood is ticking over. So now he's got to wait for those torpedoes. See, what the repulse is doing now is pointing the nose in the direction of where those torpedoes came from. But by the time you see the torpedoes, the ship that launched them is probably not going to be in the same place. I mean, stupid captains will sit in the same place launching torpedoes at the same target, but the fact that Ducky's up to 5 kills has a fairly good indication that he's probably not stupid. But, I mean, you know, the repulse... you can tell the repulse doesn't have the RPF skill because there's no indicator on screen letting Ducky Shot know that somebody with the RPF skill has an indicator pointing straight at him. But the only thing that the repulse knows is that there's a destroyer out here, so he turns his nose in towards where the torpedoes came from. Oh, he sees the torpedoes. He's trying to thread the gap between them. And he's done it. Wait, a single torpedo. That's the submarine. The third set of torpedoes, however, 2 hits. Good damage. Knocked his engine out. More flooding, which is ticking, but it's not going to be enough. The Repulsor's 6 15-inch very accurate guns, this is no guys now, are pointing exactly in this direction. Ducky Shot knows the Repulsor's going to go undetected as soon as he pops this smoke, but by shooting he's trolled the Repulse into firing back, and due to the smoke firing penalty, he is once again visible. If Ducky Shot can get a fire, or just do enough damage, he needs to nail the Repulse to give him time to deal with that submarine, and he's got a fire. But the Repulse is now damage controlled. So that was a smart use of damage control by the Repulse. It killed the fire, 2 or 3 floods, and fixed his engine. It's given the Repulse a fighting chance. And he's also healing back up again. And Ducky Shot cannot spot targets himself from within the smoke screen unless the target has big enough guns and is firing back to generate enough of a smoke firing penalty for him to see it. So now both the Repulse and the submarine know where he is. And did I mention the Repulse has some very accurate guns, but with his damage control now on cooldown, and his heal having done as much as it can, Ducky Shot now must get some fires. Another one would be nice before that Repulse gets its gun turrets swung around. He's been pinged by the submarine, so there are very likely going to be some homing torpedoes on the way. He does have his damage control ready to go, but he's saving it until he absolutely needs it. Here come the torpedoes. There goes the damage control. You're going to try to swing around it on the outside. Yep, done. Come on, finish off the battleship. And there's kill number 6. That just leaves the submarine, who's got to be dealt with fast because he's capping, and there he is. Surface to reacquire the target, which probably means there are torpedoes on the way. Of course, since he surfaced to reacquire the target, that means Ducky Shot can shoot him. He's been pinged again. 12 seconds before he can mitigate this, so he's just going to have to dodge the torpedoes the old-fashioned way. Yeah, boy, old school is best school. The submarine's staying on the surface, though, which has given Ducky Shot all kinds of opportunities to punish him. He's almost certainly trying to maintain target lock. There was the torpedo ping, there goes the damage control. That torpedo's going to miss. The submarine's doing a hard nope out of here because he will lose this gunfight. But here's the thing, the submarine can just ping him again, and he has to wait another 25 seconds before he can damage control and mitigate the ping. So what is almost certainly going to happen now is the submarine is going to pop up again at point blank range in order to get some torpedoes homing in on that lock. He's basically going to shotgun him, and here it comes. Now I want you to pay very close attention to these 2 torpedoes, because only one of them is launched from far enough away to actually give the warhead time to arm. And if that had not been the case, Ducky Shot would have died, he would not have got the final kill, and you would be looking at a defeat right now. But it didn't, so you're not. And it really doesn't get much closer than that. Congratulations, Ducky Shot. You certainly earned that one, and I hope everybody else enjoyed it, because that's it for today. As always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.